every time you walk into that tabernacle, what you think of actually, you see gold, you think of the golden calf, you think of what you did wrong, but you also think of the ability to repair, the ability for forgiveness. That idea is definitely endangered in our time. We are in such absolutes. If you do wrong, you are gone. The tabernacle is a reminder that you can be fallible and become worthy at the same time.
What it means to be fallible and worthy. Like, to me, this is the gift of a religious sensibility. And to be able to see other people like that and see ourselves that way is such I think, a really profound experience. I love thinking about the Mishkan in that light, not just as an encounter with God, but a place for that form of self-reckoning, a magical, beautiful place that we all built together for our own self-reckoning is astounding.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Texting IRL, Ideas for Real Life, where we wrestle with the big dilemmas of our time through the lens of classical and modern Torah texts. I'm your host, Elana Hain, and we're recording on January 22nd, 2026. You can find the sources for this episode in our show notes. So many of us feel adrift with all that's happening in the world. I mean, some of the things that are on my mind, for example, during the recording today, are questions about changes in the world order that are being discussed so much at this week's World Economic Forum, as Trump threatens to take over Greenland, for example, or what we're seeing in the form of domestic undermining of law and norms in the form of violent ICE incursions. And closer to my own geographic location here in Israel right now, the impossibility of knowing what the Gaza Board of Peace will actually accomplish, or the normalization of disinviting Jewish speakers and writers for their Zionist connections that my colleagues are experiencing here in Israel, and more. We're in a bit of a desert, and we're not really sure of the way out. But this week in Parashat Terumah, while they are in the desert, the Israelites are told to create nothing short of an architectural masterpiece, replete with gold and silver and copper, expensive furs and skins, and loads of wood. Where? In the desert. But why build something large and permanent while you're wandering? Is this just practice for the real thing, meaning the temple at Jerusalem eventually? Or is the messaging something different? Namely that even in the desert, you still must build. On shifting sands, you still must build. You don't know where you're going to end up, but you still must build. But what do we want to build? I mean, do we have the bandwidth to build anything right now that isn't just a fortress? I sure hope so. To help think about this question for Jewish life today, Tamara Mann Tweel returns for her hat trick, the third episode in our 3-part series beginning the book of Shemot or Exodus. Hello, Tamara.
Hello, Elana. It is wonderful to be back for this final episode in our series, and it feels especially potent because we closed our first episode with that evocative scene from the road, an image of the man's son glowing in the waste like a tabernacle. And here we are now, witnessing the building of the tabernacle, the Mishkan.
Ah, that's beautiful. So what I want to do today is I want to look at 3 different commentators, what they think the Mishkan is for, the tabernacle is for. What are we trying to build? And try to think about the so what for us today as we try to think about building. Now, these don't have to be mutually exclusive emphases, but I do think that they will give us, if we can dig into each one, they'll give us what to think about in terms of what we're trying to build. So let's start with Nahmanides, Ramban, who's going to dilate on Revelation a bit. Now, I am not a mystic. However, I do often need a mystic to help me recognize that I do believe that what you see is not everything that there is. Okay? So he says, Ka'asher diber Hashem im Yisrael panim b'fanim aseret hadibrot. When God spoke face to face with Israel, the 10 Commandments, V'Yisrael kiblu alehem la'asot kol ma sheyitzavim al yado shel Moshe, and Israel accepted upon itself to do all that God will command them through Moses. V'charat imahem brit al kol zeh, And God made a covenant with them on all of this. Me'ata, starting from now, hinehem lola, v'hu lahem lelukim. Right? God becomes their God. They become God's nation at Sinai. And then what happens at the Mishkan? Oh, v'sod ha-Mishkan hu, the secret of the tabernacle, is sheyeh kavod asher shachan al har Sinai, shochen alav b'nistar. The same divine presence that rested at Sinai is now going to rest in the Mishkan, meaning now it's a more permanent place. Obviously, it's not permanent. They're going to move it around. They're going to leave the desert eventually. But the revelation of Sinai becomes contained in the Mishkan. It's a place where you go to connect to God and the story of covenant. So how does it hit you, Tamara? What do you think?
I think what surprises me when you read this text is the strange truth that God's presence is not just felt, it's not just received, but it is built. There is this acknowledgement that we must be worthy, but it's not being worthy to receive, it's being worthy to create.
That is very interesting, meaning it takes some work, which is funny because Sinai is a naturalistic, right? It's a naturalistic. It's a mountain. It exists. Right? Here you're saying, no, you have to build an edifice that's actually going to be a place, and you're allowed to. You're invited to build such an edifice. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess when I think about that purpose right now of building, of coming into contact with God, with covenant, with Judaism. I mean, I do wonder, like, are people going to synagogue because they want to hear what the rabbi's going to say about politics? And or are people going to synagogue right now to connect to God, covenant, Judaism, right? Meaning, I think the more worried we are, the more politically engaged we are, the more it sort of becomes about something other than whatever is supposed to be revelatory in the Jewish experience. You know what I mean?
Hearing you say this, it's like two things are coming up for me. But one is like, can you imagine going to, like, just when you first started talking, this idea that you walk into synagogue each week. That is not the Mishkan. Like, you don't get to just walk in ever. Like,
right,
you
that's
have
interesting.
to. It's such a powerful religious expression. Like, if you are walking in because you gave of your material wealth, you gave of your time, you gave of your talent, you built the thing you're walking into. And so it's such a different model than like, oh, I just walk in and now I'm going to sit down and I'm going to wait to have a revelatory experience.
Oh, but you know that the amount that you invest is what you're going to get out of it. Meaning, this is why people
we all know
volunteer for boards in the synagogue and people who donate and people. It's like you walk in there and you're like, no, there's something here. There's something deep here. But I also think that you're right. You don't build. But if I walk into a synagogue, I don't know, when I'm on vacation, I walk into a synagogue that I know nothing about. There are moments where I'm sort of like, oh, wow. Like, wow, this is beautiful. Like, wow. Right. And it's not an anthropological experience that I'm seeking. I'm seeking something else. And I actually get the, oh, wow, even without having built it. You know?
Yeah, no, it's true.
It's a container for it. It's a container for it, even if I didn't build it.
I love this Parsha so much for that. Like, how to think about beauty in Judaism. Like, how to think about the spiritual elevation of beauty. And I think there's something for me about the Mishkan where the beauty is impermanent. I also think
by definition.
And I think this reality of like a beautiful impermanence or a majestic impermanence is maybe there's some attribute of Judaism that is really invested in that form of an aesthetic. So, and also I think the other thing that's so interesting to me is the constant contrast. So there's so many obsessively permanent details in the Mishkan. Like when you read the text, you're like, oh my gosh, it's this amount of wood, it's this amount of gold, it's this measurement. It's like, you really can make, I mean, you imagine the builders are feeling really crazy. Like, oh, is this exactly right?
Yes.
Did I do this exactly right?
Yes.
But to balance this really concrete material effort with an ephemeral purpose of an encounter with God, to me, that as like the Jewish encounter.
Well, you know that when I go different places for Hartman, do you know that if I'm ever giving a talk like in a synagogue, I
Yeah.
always ask the rabbi to take me into the sanctuary because I just want to experience the surprise of whatever the aesthetic is. It
Really?
shocks you once again at how beautiful a Jewish experience can be. And it shocks you once again to realize how much people have invested in a place that is dedicated to Judaism, that is dedicated to a
Yeah.
divine covenant, that is dedicated to praying to God. Meaning that aesthetic to me is sort of like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable how much work everybody put in and what the measurements were supposed to be and da 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 da. I want to be awed. I want to be awed. And so I look for the aesthetic experience actually to help me be awed in that way.
You know what's funny? I'm like literally the opposite. Like I
Okay.
prefer to daven in an ugly basement almost every day.
Wow. Wow.
And
wow.
I'm someone who loves beauty. Like I love beauty. I like love art. I love but the reason for me is the beauty for me is always the way people daven. Like the aesthetic moment for me is always when the davening starts and all of a sudden something where I couldn't see beauty all of a sudden transforms, which is such a funny.
By the way,
Yeah.
we may be coming at this with like a Locke versus Hobbes view of human beings, meaning what do you think is beautiful? I walk into the synagogue, I'm like, this synagogue is beautiful. The people, and you walk in, you're like, the people are beautiful. The synagogue,
The sounds of the
right?
people are beautiful.
That's
The sounds of the people.
That's
Our prayers are so
Wow.
beautiful. Our prayers are so beautiful.
Okay, so what you're saying is there's also a revelation of the beauty of people in those moments as well, meaning just to play on words with revelation as well.
Yes. But I think there's a tremendous anxiety inside Judaism about the role of beauty.
Oh,
like we don't want it to
How do you see
we don't want it to descend into avodah zarah. We don't want it to descend into idolatry. And I think there is, when you think about these beautiful sanctuaries, we don't want them to look like churches. We want them. I think we are both invested in beauty and anxious about beauty. So I just wanted to say that because I think the Maimonides will speak to that too.
Let's see. Okay, so now we're looking at the Rambam, who is not a mystic, okay? The Rambam, Maimonides, he is a rationalist. He's an arch rationalist. And he does not think that revelation, coming to receive something, I would say, is the essence of what's going on here. He actually suggests that coming to do something is the essence of what's going on here. And he says, V'ha mitzvah ha'esrim, the 20th mitzvah, this is in the book in which he counts all 613 mitzvot, he shetzivanu livnot beit avodah. God commanded us to build a house of worship. Bo yeh ha'krava, there's going to be sacrifice in there, v'havarat ha'esh tamid, and there's going to be a constant burning flame in there. Ve'elav yeh halicha v'aliyah l'regel v'kibutz b'chol shana. And that is where people are going to go on pilgrimage, and literally, right, like going up with their feet on pilgrimage and gathering every year and throughout the year, right? So I look at this and I say, oh, so the tabernacle, I got it. It's a place of gathering. I got that. But it's a place to work. It's a place to serve. It's a place of action where you have to act out your vows. It might even, by the way, be a place of sacrifice, right? And I don't just mean sacrifice like giving an animal, but sacrifice in the metaphorical sense of you're giving something up, which is what you're doing when you're giving an animal or your flower. You're giving something up, right? So when you look at that take, what do you think? It's a little less romantic. What do you take?
Yes,
Do you take
it's
from
funny.
it?
I'm like, wow, I'm really leaning towards the mystic because I hear this reading, and it feels really less relational. It's not a place of encounter. It feels like it's a place where we do work and worship, perhaps for the sake of God's enjoyment, of God's pleasure. It's something we're offering, but it doesn't feel that same mystical encounter. But now,
But
Tell me what you
Maimonides,
think.
Maimonides would be very upset to hear what you just said because
I'm
God
sorry.
doesn't have enjoyment. Meaning, God doesn't have That's not the way Maimonides works. Maimonides would tell you all of the worship that we do, in the end, it shapes us and it shapes our society, right? Meaning, so when I'm going and doing an action in whatever it is that the Jewish community is building, it's also shaping me, meaning hopefully it's doing something in the world, right? Maybe it's doing something, I don't know exactly what Maimonides would say it's doing metaphysically, but I think if we're talking about things that we go do, actions that we do, we hope that those actions are actually having some sort of effect, but they're also having an effect on us, right? So, when I think about this, I'm saying to myself, oh, this is a place that actually pushes us to do good, right? To be good, to
I
do
love that.
something.
No, I think that I find that extremely helpful. And I mean, you won't be surprised to hear me say this, but it really reminds me of one of my favorite novels.
A shock. A shock.
Yeah. Yeah, Middlemarch by George Eliot. And Eliot writes about a man who's at a stage in life where he will either be formed by his best impulses or by his compromises. And she writes, the man was still in the making. And
Love
I,
it.
I love this because it reminds us, that we're not formed by our intentions, but by our actions. But I think even more than that, what you're alerting me to, which I find really powerful, I was talking about this anxiety of beauty in Judaism.
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
anxiety is like, what is it for? Like
Right.
Maimonides is so clear. Like there's a distinction between avodah zarah and beit avodah. Like there's a real distinction, and the distinction is that you
Like, what's
work
the difference
for
between the golden
God.
calf? What's the difference between the
Yeah,
golden calf and the golden, incense altar?
tabernacle. Yeah,
Right.
the cherubs.
Right. And you're like, oh, the difference is what are you doing it for? Right? It's kind of what if your motivations. So that's an interesting thing. I mean, it's funny. I actually want to pause for a second. I want to stay on the actions versus I'm going to say I'm about to say the actions versus ideas. It's one of the things
Yeah,
that's so interesting about Hartman is we talk about ideas so much. Oh my gosh, ideas, ideas, ideas. But the
right.
reason we talk about ideas is because we want them to lead people to do action, right? And it actually should be a cycle. It should be ideas lead to action, action leads to internalizing ideas, which then leads to thinking ideas, which then leads to right? Meaning there should be something that people like go out and do, right? There should be, it shouldn't
I
just
think
all
there's
sit up
yeah,
here or in here. It's what are we going to do? What are we doing? Right?
but
Something like
I
that.
think yes, I don't even know if it's in the form of a question, but I feel like there is something in this text that's saying that doing refines the soul.
Right. Well, I'm adding the
Like
refines the soul
yeah,
from elsewhere
yeah,
in Maimonides, but I
yes,
think he would agree if you were reading, Maimonides' Guide for the Perplexed, and maybe we'll put it in the show notes. You would
yeah,
see him saying it does. It's supposed to refine the soul or give you the right ideas
yes.
or refine the body, refine society, right? So this might be a soul refining one.
No, I'm just really trying to imagine. I actually like trying to imagine what it would feel like to build the Mishkan. Like to
Of
take
course
a
you are. It's so you.
sorry,
I
no, I'm
knew it.
trying to like actually imagine it. Like, because when you do repetitive tasks,
Yeah.
there's something meditative about it. So there's something about getting the wood exactly right and getting the gold exactly right. Like that
But I don't think that's just
process,
repetitive. I think it's focus also. It's
right? It's
defined. It's something
extreme
that's
focus.
defined.
And what it would mean to do that exact task for the sake of something debased or for the sake of getting closer to God. I think it would really alter the experience of the action and the experience of the focus.
Right. That's very interesting. Look, I think in some ways you're asking questions about like how do you purify your motives is not such a purify. I'm worried about that word a little bit. But how
Yes.
how do you have like the right motives? Or as our, people always hear in the closing, I read that our colleague Nina Kretzmer-Seed is involved in the show, and she had an incredible insight before the show, saying how well it's amazing how the golden calf is done at the bottom of a mountain, but pilgrimage is described as aliyah. You have to go up, meaning so. Is there something that's supposed to elevate you? Are you supposed to leave elevated, not in the sense of like you're so special, but elevated as in your motivations, the way you are, the way you act, the way what you do elevated, right? Like elevated, right? And it's not a passive elevation. You have to do something to become something, and you have to keep doing it
Yeah.
to become it. You have to keep doing it to become it. I think that's very interesting. Can I push us to the third? Can I push us to
Yes.
Rashi?
Yes.
Because I do
Yeah.
think that already we're saying something about the way that we build. Like there is a little bit of a so what here, right? If we're building for the purpose of kind of revelation, a sense of getting connected to Judaism, to God, to covenant, if we're building for a sense of like shaping the world and shaping yourself and becoming elevated, right? So Rashi, actually, I love Rashi's because Rashi reads the Torah out of order, which I think is amazing. And he says it doesn't matter that the description to build a Mishkan is in this week's Torah portion and the description of the golden calf sin is in 2 weeks, because guess what? This portion actually comes after that portion. Like chronologically, this is what happened. And so he says, by the way, you know what the Mishkan is for? The Mishkan is for the Mishkan Edut. It's basically the tabernacle of testimony. Testimony to what? Edut li Yisrael, testimony to Israel. Sheviter lahem hakadosh baruch hu al maseh egel, that God forgave them for doing the golden calf. Sheharei hishra shchinato beinehem, because God was willing to dwell among them in the tabernacle. Meaning, what is the tabernacle a reminder of? You did something wrong, right? Every time you walk into that tabernacle, what you think of actually, you see gold, you think of the golden calf, right? You think of what you did wrong, but you also think of the ability to repair, the ability for forgiveness, right? You reflect on the wrongdoing, right? That idea is definitely endangered in our time. We are in such absolutes. If you do wrong, you are gone. You are irredeemable. You're out, right? The tabernacle is actually a reminder that you can be fallible and become worthy at the same time. Or through a process.
I love that phrase so much, Elana. What it means to be fallible and worthy. Like, to me, this is the gift of a religious sensibility.
It's the title of my memoir.
Yeah. Fallible and worthy.
Fallible and worthy.
Yeah. And to be able to see other people like that and see ourselves that way is such I think, a really profound experience. I love thinking about the Mishkan in that light, not just as an encounter with God or a discipline of service, but a self-reckoning, like a place for that form of self-reckoning, a magical, beautiful place that we all built together for our own self-reckoning is astounding.
And what you're really you're saying both self-reckoning, but also recognizing that others can be fallible but worthy.
Yeah.
Right? It reminds me actually what you said in our last episode. For people who haven't heard it, this is the plug. The last episode on the Parsha of Yitro, where you said, see your parents the way God sees your parents, which is, even if they're cranky and stingy, they're still worthy. Something like
everyone.
that. By the way, your parents see their kids as cranky and stingy too. That's just,
no, but the idea that the community collectively participated in creating a space of beauty for you to reckon is an incredible idea.
Yes.
Wait, so Elana, you've given us.
We're a little bit afraid of reckoning. By the way, we're afraid of reckoning because a lot of people are saying a lot of bad stuff about us right now. So it's hard to reckon. It's hard to reckon.
But
it's
also
really
the
hard to reckon.
privacy of the Mishkan is so interesting. There's something beautiful that it's enclosed, that it's holy. I don't know.
Well,
anyway, I
want
to make sure I get this last.
I want to get to this last point, but let's just be, accurate.
Yeah.
The courtyard's wide open. Courtyard's wide open. You know what I'm saying? Where the altar is, where the main altar, it's wide open. So it's tough.
It's both.
It's tough. I recognize it's tough. But yeah, so what did you want to say? I'm sorry. I know we're running.
No, you're right.
To the end. We're running to the end. Yes.
Okay. So you've given us 3 reasons for the Mishkan in the desert. But we know what the rabbis did with this act of building. It was never just about the Mishkan. It set the stage for what we can and cannot do on Shabbat. And would love to hear you add that perspective.
Well, so actually, I think it's just adding a little footnote, which is there's also an ability to just stay still sometimes. And actually what the rabbis do is they say, well, Shabbat, you build the Mishkan, you build. And sometimes you're actually just allowed to rest. And I think a lot of us, like, I don't know about you, but sometimes It's like when I'm resting, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I missing? Oh my gosh, what have I not checked? Oh my gosh, what's going on in the world? Oh my God. Like actually being able to rest. And what's essential to building is having a moment to rest.
I feel like you've also hinted at something else here that I just want to name, which is the act of building in the Mishkan, and even for the rabbis, how they think about the different pieces, is actually all about what we're practicing. It's like they offered us a series of different practices, a practice to encounter God. You know what I mean? And a practice for when to work and when to rest.
Oh,
And I think
interesting.
it's everything is how we behave, not just what we build. And I think it's a fascinating idea because we spend so much time thinking about what we're going to build, why we're going to build it, how it's going to last forever.
But you're saying the
And we don't
practice
really
of it.
spend any time thinking about, you know, what are we practicing when we build and why? The
Right.
Mishkan has holy
Interesting.
means and holy ends.
Mm.
And I actually think that's I think it's an important lesson for us. Like, what are we practicing when we build our institutions today? And
That's wow.
And you opened up this like incredible conversation with this lovely refrain, on shifting sands you must build. When you're still not sure where you'll end up, you must build. But honestly, what I'm taking away from our conversation today is that we must build, but not ever really for the sake of building or for the sake of permanence. Do you know what I mean? Like actually,
I
we
know what you
learn to
mean,
build.
but
Yeah, we
I'm a
learn how to
yes
live in the
and.
wilderness.
I'm a yes
You're a
and.
yes and. Okay.
I'm a yes and, meaning I want
Okay.
ends.
Oh
I
no,
want
I'm
ends
not.
to matter,
We
and
need the ends.
but I want means to matter too. And I think there is a question of, are people actually finding meaning in the means? Meaning, are people actually finding meaning in the everyday, the practices, the engagement, the involvement?
But could we pay more attention to that as a community, actually? Like, are the means endowed with a form of like physical beauty? Are they ritualized so you feel you're doing individual work and collective work? I mean, I actually think there's
Well, that's
opportunity in the means.
I think sometimes with volunteer work, especially, people are able to really. There is a ritualization of it. I remember last year I was at.
Yeah.
There was after the big fires in California, a friend of mine
Yeah.
was they were doing a Judaica giveaway for people who had lost all of their Judaica. And it was such a ritualized process, the process of building, right? That's what it was. It was the people who donated the Judaica in the first place. It's the people who wrapped it, the people who boxed it, the people who brought it over to the synagogue where this quote unquote sale was happening, the people who unboxed it, organized it onto the tables, the customers who came in talking to them about their story, right? Like all of that was essential to, the whole experience, even of these people getting their new Judaica, right? Even to the ends, the means matter a lot. So that's really interesting. Well, Tamara Mann Tweel, thank you for being with me for 3 episodes.
It was my
And-
pleasure.
And thank you for everyone for listening to our show.